Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Livia Kohn. I'm the executive editor of Three Pines Press, and it is my great pleasure today to introduce a new project we are publishing. There's a 3-volume series on issues of time in Taoist concepts and practices, which was inspired by the International Conference on Taoist Studies with a focus on time, held in June of 2019 at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And the first volume is ready for publication and purchase. And the title is Tao and Time, Classical Philosophy. And we're very pleased today to have with us Professor Robert Elliott Allinson, who was Professor Emeritus at Soka University, and he contributed a paper to the volume. He's long-term authority on Zhuangzi. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Allinson.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me.
So let us begin by introducing you a little bit more to our audience. Obviously, people who have been in the field for some time and who are familiar with it know about your very important work. However, there are people who don't. So if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I became interested in Chinese intellectual thought as an undergraduate, and took courses with the great historian, who's late historian now, Ping Chai Kuo, and studied Chinese at a time when it was very little offering of Chinese language at undergraduate institutions. I think mine was the second after Harvard to offer it. And later I went on to do further study in Chinese language at Columbia University with the fabled Loretta Pan, for those who know her, and went on to do my doctorate in East-West philosophy. I'm actually trained in philosophy, not in sinology. And after some time, there was an international competition for a post at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And I wound up being selected after competing with people from Europe and USA and other places. And I was to spend the next virtually 3 decades there as the first Westerner to teach in the Department of Philosophy there, with about 18 Chinese professors. And so for over 20 years, I was the only Westerner in the department. And I taught both Chinese philosophy and Western philosophy. And what was funny was that at that time, the students wanted to study Western philosophy very much, but they weren't at all interested in Chinese thought. And they thought it was like old wives' tales, they learned from their grandmother. And I was in the ironic position of having to encourage them to study Chinese philosophy as philosophy. And I came to know many very famous colleagues that were good friends of mine. Lao Yunwei, the famous Chinese historian, had his office right next door to mine. We had many, many conversations. He's also known as Lao Su Kong in Cantonese, because in Hong Kong, Cantonese was then the major language. And I also came to know D.C. Lau, the famous translator of Lun Yu and Mengzi and so on. And I used to invite him to my classes many times to lecture on Lun Yu. And we had many conversations together. I came to know Burton Watson, the famous translator, and colleague for about a year. And he was later to write a review of one of my first books on Zhuangzi in the Journal of Chinese Philosophy. And then I was also invited to give lectures at Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, to be visiting professor at Beida by Tang Yijia, to be visiting professor at Fudan University, Nanjing University, many other institutions in China. And my book was eventually translated into Chinese and Korean and reviewed maybe 30, 40 times on mainland. I think I'm a little bit better known on mainland than in the United States, actually. It's kind of funny. And in time, when I was invited by Tang Yijia, I actually was lecturing in the Edgar Snow House, which is a forbidden place for most people. It was quite exciting and thrilling, and actually stayed in the bedroom where Nixon slept at Fudan University. Wow. Real old-fashioned with the fan and all things in straw and so on. Things have quite changed now.
But now you live in California, so you
Yes,
left
yes.
Hong Kong a few years ago?
Yes, I left Hong Kong some time back after publishing my book with Oxford University Press was on understanding the Chinese mind. And that book, I looked for the philosophical roots, trying to, because up to that point in time, Chinese philosophy was mostly taught in departments of religion or Asian studies or Asian languages. So I was trying to look at it through a philosophical lens. That was my quest. And now that's in its 11th edition, so it's done a good time. And let's see now, what else can I tell you? Since I've been here, I've been publishing more on Zhuangzi. I've published about 25 articles on Zhuangzi. And in fact, in the 2001 edition of the Journal of Chinese Philosophy, there was an independent scholar rated my work in the top 0.15% of scholars writing on Zhuangzi.
Oh, very good. So would you explain a little bit what your main where you see the most important feature of Zhuangzi in your view?
I think the most important feature is that his book and his writing, of course, it's written by different authors, as we all know, but we take the text as our kind of like icon. I think he's mostly interested in self-transcendence. My early book was called Self-Transformation. And I think that the story that he begins with the great bird Peng, that is transformed from the fish under the water, Kun. I think this is the symbol for the book, that we must rise from the world of ignorance and darkness to a world of freedom and great vision. And I think that, and of course he has many parables and puzzles and paradoxes, and these are all designed to break down the conventional ways of thinking about things, so that our mind is able to soar.
Great sense of freedom, of lightness, of the whole free and easy wandering idea, and the openness and things in that direction. So that's absolutely a central feature of Zhuangzi. And so when in our volume, which focuses mainly on time, you talk about Zhuangzi, and so your title is The Whirlpool of Time. So how do you see the whirlpool image and what Zhuangzi's take is on time?
Yes, I think the interest in time is largely an interest in mortality, and as we all face the onset of old age and the losing of our physical powers and deterioration of our mental powers, I think this was a concern that evolved into the kind of fascination with time. In chapter 2 in Qi Wu Lun, the famous chapter everybody is studying and learning, Zhuangzi has a wonderful story of his kind of existential lament about the passing of time and the deterioration of our physical and mental powers and how absurd it was. And then he says in a famous line, am I the only one who realizes this? So this seems at odds with his view of life as working towards transcendence. But actually the two go together in a very strange way. That the reason he turns to transcendence is precisely because of this sadness that he recognizes in a kind of existentialist parable he says about himself. So I think the interest in time is in transcending time. And I see this as through the whirlpool. And the reason for the whirlpool is a story he tells in the later chapters about Confucius, who's standing by the banks of a river. And he uses Confucius as a figurehead in his stories. It's fictional portrayal, of course. He likes to poke fun. And also, I think this also has the meaning that someone who thinks conventionally, as he thinks Confucius does, can't understand these matters. So he's kind of puzzled and watching this old man jump into the river, and he jumps into the river where there's a whirlpool, and then he sees the man being sucked down into the river, and then eventually he's ejected and gets up safely on the other side. So he's really amazed by this. How did the man negotiate this whirlpool, which can take people down, and that's the end of them. And the old man tells him that where the whirlpool, brings him, he goes down with it. He doesn't try to resist it. And where it throws him up, he lets it erupt him into the safety of the other bank. This, of course, has another metaphorical meaning, reaching the other bank of enlightenment or great understanding. So this is we all succumb to the whirlpool of time, and it's only in our understanding of it and its ways that we can reach kind of an enlightenment that he talks about also in chapter 2.
Yeah. So this is very fascinating for our readers, since we're not just talking about some ancient philosophy that is very far away and very distant from us, but we're really bringing Zhuangzi and his vision and his emotions and his feelings into our lives. And so there's something that is very relevant in the present world to understand as everybody ages, to see themselves as moving through a whirlpool and coming out in some state of freedom. So do you see like a contemporary relevance there?
Oh, yes, very much so. I think that the philosophy is kind of universal. In my way of thinking, it crosses time, it crosses cultures, it crosses languages, it crosses geography. It's kind of an eternal set of truths for us to ponder and consider and contemplate and hopefully become edified by them. So I think it very much speaks to the present day. These are the problems that human beings had then and have now. And so, yeah.
So very good. So from your long experience and your important work on Zhuangzi and your sharing many years of teaching, so we're very pleased that you were able to contribute to the volume, and people will appreciate and understand how Zhuangzi sees transformation and how time becomes both a medium and an object of transformation in this process. So we encourage everybody to come and look at our website at threepinespress.com, where you will find more details about the book, including the complete table of contents and also the introduction, and then you can order the work. And so again, thank you very much, Professor Allinson, for joining us today and for helping our readers to understand more what this volume is all about.
Oh, thank you. And I don't want to leave without saying a word about Livia, who has been a wonderful guide for all of us and bringing different luminaries together in this volume. And she spent her lifetime in her career in bringing the insights of Taoism to the general public. So I'm sure you will all enjoy this book.
Thank you.